Merry Christmas. Okay, I'm going to answer a few questions. This one is a good one. I just was having this discussion with one of my attorneys the other day because we're going to have to rethink how we do IEP meetings here in the future, and I'll explain that after I tell you what the question is. School is saying that the annual ARD meeting, which in Texas that's what they call IEP meetings, ARD meeting has to be on Zoom. I asked to be present at the school with proper PPE. You think this will be possible? I asked, so we will see. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this into my experience that I just had a couple weeks ago before the Christmas break. I have a case that we settled back in May, and since May, we've had 4 different IEP meetings. Okay. Now this is all post-COVID, so they've been doing everything via Zoom or Google Meets, doesn't matter. And we weren't getting anywhere. Parent wasn't getting anywhere. This school started virtually. The parents were given 2 crap computers, a hotspot that didn't work. Every time they'd reach out to the school staff, because there was no direct contact, parents couldn't go to the school, nothing was ever done. Okay, and then so it doesn't matter. The summer services that were supposed to happen in the agreement that were supposed to be done virtually. Also, the first 9 weeks was done virtually, and my client didn't have access to school because he was given 2 different broken computers and a hotspot that didn't work. Okay, so we had another IEP meeting in August that was done via Zoom, and it was a very important IEP meeting because we were talking about diploma pathways. And this school system, because it was done via Zoom, was quite difficult to, not that they're already not difficult. This is one of those systems that I believe is too big and incompetent because of its size. And this hand doesn't know what this hand or foot is doing at any given time because it's too big. But with that being said, disastrous IEP meeting mainly because of the case manager and the special education teacher. Everyone else, and that led to me having to file another due process complaint. And so, here we are right before Christmas. It was time to have a meeting. The parent said, look, these Zoom meetings have been disastrous. We want an in-person meeting. I made the school aware of that. I said that I was going to be present. And that was 2 weeks before the scheduled meeting. The weekend, close of business, 5 o'clock on a Friday, when the meeting was on Tuesday, I get a meeting notice from the school's attorney, and it says Zoom. So, 2 weeks, they knew I was coming in. They knew I was going to be there. I had already made all my plans to travel down to this location. And that was the surprise I got, the meeting notice that they were going to do it Zoom. Now, the excuse I was given is that the staff didn't feel safe having an in-person meeting when students were fully back in session. They're all interacting with each other. I'm quite sure that all of these people have gone into a Walmart or a Costco or a Lowe's or a restaurant, because in this particular state, this stuff's open. So to sit there and use the excuse that we don't feel safe, and of course I flipped out. And when I say flip out, I don't say that in a charged way. I say it in my typical calm fashion, that I don't appreciate having the staff make these subtle accusations as though I'm Typhoid Mary or that my clients are patient zero, when we could absolutely accomplish a in-person meeting safely with distance and everybody wearing their PPE. Okay, but it doesn't matter. We live in a new world, and the staff at the school said no, we don't feel safe. So this is the new excuse, you see. So they ended up accommodating us, so at the administration building, and then in the conference room, where we were with administrators and the board attorney, then they threw up the people at the child's school up on the big screen, okay? And they were all there. Same players as in August. So I had a case manager, special ed teacher, all the right people were there. And what hit me at that time was that the reason that I was continuing to have problems, and this is going to be true in locations where people already have issues, okay? Good people, it doesn't matter whether they do it Zoom, whether they do it in person. You're always going to get the same result with good teachers and good administrators. It just doesn't matter. But what I've noticed is that with bad educators, with bad administrators, with those that have power trip issues, those who have grudges, those are just sour, disgusting human beings, which exist within any profession, okay, including the law. But in these particular situations, I'm referring to public education. And this particular case manager and special ed teacher had screwed up on this child's program in the past. And there was a motivation for them to perpetuate the fiction because they didn't want to be wrong. And I think they were also retaliating against the parent. But see, what Zoom and Google Meets provides for the bad educators and the bad administrators is this buffer, you see. I can sit there and say whatever I want because I've got protection. I've got a buffer between my video and my voice and what you're hearing on the other side. Much different dynamic when you're forced into a meeting where you see people face to face. And it tends to insert a civility in these meetings that doesn't exist in these formats like Zoom because they're impersonal. You don't have to sit there and respond to somebody. You know, hell, I've been in meetings to where things start getting excited and I see people muting themselves and turning their videos off. And then providing whatever excuse under the sun as to why it didn't work. Now, prior to COVID, I was really hoping that we could start doing these things and using technology and taking advantage of the technology. Because on a lawyer's side, we can accomplish so much more because it's not consumed with travel time. Because we do practice statewide in 5 different states. And that also cuts down on air travel and, you know, like I said, drive time. So, you know, I was, before COVID, I was always like, why can't we just do this virtually? It will save, you know, the school district and the parents the expenses related to this non-essential attorney travel to be at these locations. At the same time, and I think in some ways, depending on the nature of the issues, the demeanor of the administration and the teachers, like I said, I've had very positive Zoom meetings, very positive IEP meetings over Zoom. So, you know, but what I'm saying is with the complex cases where I'm dealing with bad leadership and poor attitudes, I find this to be a problem as far as technology because it is being used, it is being abused. It empowers bad behavior because it removes the person from any direct contact or any direct accountability for their behavior. All right. So in your particular situation, I would make these requests, but I can tell you that as of right now, there's a lot of flexibility given, and there's nothing in the law that says, because why would it be in the law? It wouldn't be in the law. I mean, the law is still applicable pre-COVID. You see, we wrote all this stuff before we ever dealt with a pandemic. And see, the presumption was always that the meetings would be in person. The law creates the flexibility to be able to do these things via telephone or video conference. So the contingencies are in there, guys. There really wasn't anything in special education that needed to change with the pandemic because the flexibility was already written in there. Except the presumption was an in-person meeting, and the secondary options were conference call or video conferencing, which were allowed. Well, because of COVID, those now have become the presumption that we're going to do it over Zoom or we're going to do it over conference call. And then the secondary is this scary in-person meeting, like we've never done it before, and we're putting people at risk. And, that might be the case. There are human beings out there that work in education and also parents, that are high-risk individuals. And I get that. But those individuals, because of the technology, can be brought into the meeting. But everyone else, there's no reason why we can't have in-person meetings with that personal touch. Guys, we're social creatures. This can't continue. And that's what I don't want, is I don't want us insulated with these bad habits of doing everything in this impersonal fashion. Social media should have taught us that. But what it's done is it's really destroyed a bit of our civility because we're not interacting with each other in person. And there's a lot of you out there, and when I say you, and I'm talking generally, that become Billy badasses over text, over the internet. Why? Because you're insulated. You don't have to see somebody. They don't sit there and slap your face or clock you for the trash that comes out of some of your mouth. And once again, I'm making this generalization. I'm not talking specifically to anybody. But there are some negatives to all of this technology. It's great. I mean, I can't tell you. We're so much more efficient as a legal practice because of the ability. We can do more than we were able to pre-COVID because of this. Now schools, who once were like, that's crazy to do stuff over the internet, because government schools, very, very hard to change. COVID sort of forced them to change. Now they've embraced the technology. But like I said, there's going to be a positive to it. There's going to be a negative to it. I think you as a parent has a right to request an in-person meeting. It can be done with proper spacing and with PPE. There shouldn't be any problems, and there shouldn't be any disagreement to be able to provide you that format, especially if everybody there is interacting with teachers or their coworkers, with students, which they all are now in Texas, for example. In some other states, no. But in your state, yes, they are. And especially if they are out in the community at all, at a Walmart or what. I just don't understand the logic in some people that I'm going to go to a Walmart, but I can't go to school. I can go to a Costco, but I can't have an in-person IEP meeting. That is the most ridiculous farce I've ever heard of in my life. Whatever. But like I said, I think you have a right. This is the problem, though. There's going to be a lot of flexibility given because of COVID to sit there and reject your request. Now, you can't necessarily say liar, liar, pants on fire. You just aren't. You can't do that because you can't prove why they're doing it. I can just sit there and tell you your gut feeling is probably correct, that they're going for the low-hanging, lazy fruit and just wanting to have it via Zoom out of convenience. At some point, we've got to stop doing that. And so at some point, parents have got to sort of get together and start drawing a line and saying, no, this is impersonal. We need to have a face-to-face, especially if you are around toxic administrators and toxic educators that are using Zoom as their excuse to be jerks. Okay? I do believe the personal touch is beneficial in most cases. Zoom, in other cases, are just as positive. But it depends on a myriad of factors that you've got to work through. Um, Now, the question would be from parents, is there anything you can do about it? Do you have a right to an in-person meeting? No, because there's these flexible options to have a meeting. And because the presumption before COVID was an in-person meeting with those secondary options, now it's flipped to where the presumption are these technological options and then the secondary being in person. Um, so everybody's right and wrong at the same time on this issue, and to have it as a legal challenge, it hasn't been legally challenged yet. And as I've told people before, anytime you're in a sort of a social emergency like COVID or war or whatever, rights are always sacrificed in the beginning because government, judges, people like that are going to err on the side of caution. The longer you go into it, then you're going to start seeing judges get some backbone and start smacking this stuff down as violations of your constitutional rights, infringements on your liberty, which these lockdowns absolutely are. But this is what happens. This is what has happened in this country historically when we have, let's say, a national emergency. But there's always an echo boom later when things start to calm down, where the judges come in and whack the various government agencies, the levels of government for how they responded. And I expect the same thing to happen in this situation.